I've been rereading Lessons in the Fundamentals of Go. It's been a while, several years. The first time I read it, I was probably around 12 to 10Q. And a lot of it went over my head. I read it from cover to cover, but at the end of it, I just kind of concluded this is not the book for me. And I remember opening up a Janice Kim book and looking at the very basic principles of making a bass and things like that, and things just clicking so much better for me from that level of Go literature. I was really in way over my head, but I've grown over the years and I've come to understand the game a lot better. And I thought, this book is so renowned. So many people love this book that I thought maybe it's time to go and revisit it. And a lot of people do recommend rereading this book. But it was certainly a humbling experience to crack this book open again and find myself struggling with these problems that Kageyama is just saying, like, oh, this is pretty simple. And I'm like, what did I learn these past few years? Like, what have I been doing? Like, if I can't solve these supposed easy things, and remind you, I remember cracking open this book a couple of times, and I faced a couple of these problems, and I'm looking at it like, I know there's something tricky with this one, because I remember it. I remember the problem. But even then, I was failing to find the best move for that position. And I don't know, I think I need to up my study game with this book and really ingrain these shapes and knowledge into my body, and so that I can actually learn from the book instead of just skimming through it. So this time I'm reading, I'm going to try to be a little more intensive and put more care into understanding the content rather than just looking at it, just kind of going, oh yeah, that makes sense, and then moving on. Studying Go is very hard. And from a book, you really get what you put into it. You're listening to Start Point, the show about Go for Go fans away from the board. And I have been playing games. If you've been listening for the past few episodes, I've been telling you guys I've actually been playing games. And I'm happy to report that my last game, I won, broke a mini losing streak, and I won by 3/4 points. Because I was playing on Fox, and they use an interesting form of counting, which can be done in a Chinese counting game, where you add up all of Black's points and divide it by, or subtract all of Black points from 361, and I don't remember how this goes. But anyway, the end result is that Comey is 3 3/4 points, because it's half of 7.5 points. Because you're counting. This isn't supposed to be an episode on weird Chinese counting, but I think you're counting half of the points. So since you're only counting half of the points, you only award half the Comey, and half of the Comey in Chinese counting would be half of 7.5, which turns out to be, it turns into a 3 3/4 Comey, and so you're able to win or lose by an increment of 3/4. And so that's to say that I won by 3/4 points. I thought I was more ahead than that, but it translates to winning by 1.5 points, which is not something. I mean, it's small, but it's not a half point difference. But anyway, I won the game. I should probably explain that in more detail in another episode on counting. But yeah, that's I won. That's the whole point. And having played more games in the past few weeks, it's been more important for me to find a better way to review my games. And with last week's episode on black box thinking and how we shouldn't ignore our mistakes, and the focus on our failures is really key to growth, I have been trying to live by that and actually review my games. Except reviewing games, it often becomes overwhelming extremely quickly if you're me. What happens is you sit down and you go, okay, it's time to review this game. And then I go move by move. I'm like, okay, this is normal opening. Okay, weird off Joseki move. What do I do here? What is this Joseki? Is this pincer right? Is this an actual response? Or what am I supposed to do to this attach on this Joseki? Let me look it up and go to the Joseki library on OGS or Eido Go or whatever your Joseki library of choices. And I go in, I look it up, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's an interesting thing. Like, I didn't know this Joseki existed. What if you went over here? And like, what if I do this? And like, I wonder why. And then like, I'm not even reviewing the game at this point. I'm just studying this Joseki. And like, I've spent 15 minutes on it, and I'm like, okay, I'm a little burnt out. I think I'm going to shelve this game for now, and I'll resume later. And then I never do. That's a problem. And even if I get past the Joseki situation, it just branches on and on and on, and I'm always getting caught up. And I've done an episode on how to review your games, but even though I have that methodology, I still get tripped up and I get a little overwhelmed. So this episode is a little bit of a reprise on that episode, and I want to give you a little more of a quick bite guideline for how to review your games. It's a newer strategy that I've been implementing. Of course, these are just ideas that I've come up with while trying to improve myself at Go, but I find that some of these insights may be helpful for some of you. So, to avoid all of that branching out and overwhelming thinking when it comes to reviewing your own games, because every single move, we all know, Go has so many moves that there are more moves on a Go board than the number of atoms in the known universe. I mean, that's pretty crazy. So there are so many branches that you can get sidetracked with, and it's difficult to know which branches are the right ones you should be investigating. And so, we can try looking at AI, which I will recommend, but before going to AI, I perform what I'd call an autopsy of the game, or a post-mortem, I guess, if you want to call it that. I don't really know the difference between an autopsy and a post-mortem. I think they're kind of the same thing, but I'm looking at the very end of the game. Now, this will work for finished games mostly. It will be less effective on games that have been resigned halfway through, although arguably it will be less necessary for those kinds of games. When you look at the end result of the game, what you're looking for is large swaths of territory. And whether you lost or won, I'm going to just kind of explain this in the perspective that you lost the game, because those are the more important games to review. Let's say you lost a game. You're going to look at the end result of the game and look at your opponent's territories and find the biggest one or the biggest reason that you may have lost. It could be just a huge chunk of, maybe your opponent got this huge side and you have no comparable territory to match that. Maybe your opponent killed one of your groups and you just have this sprawling dead group on the board. There's this huge dead group on the board and you're like, if I didn't lose that group, I may have won. Whatever it is, what you're trying to do is find the biggest reason and the biggest swath of territory on the board that is probably the reason you lost. Like I said, with the half-finished games, it's not going to be as easy to do because you're not going to find that large, solidified, crystallized territory. But since somebody resigned, it should be more apparent why that person lost, right? So they're looking at something and they're looking at a dead group. They're looking at a giant piece of territory that they can't invade and they're resigning, right? So it should be easier to identify that reason. The next step, once you've identified which kind of area you think is the area that your opponent got the better of you, it's time to put on your archaeologist hat and start digging and investigating why So what you're going to do is go backwards from the end of the game instead of what I think most people do. They start from the beginning of the game to review. We're going to start from the end of the game and go backwards to find out how this territory of your opponent came to be. How did they end up with so much territory? What did you gain while giving away this territory? And you're going to go move by move back until you find a point where you feel like the exchange is taking place, where you are giving up this territory, you are making a decision not to invade, or you're making a decision to exchange that territory for influence, or whatever it is that you did. Once you find that juncture, you're going to look at whether that move makes sense, that sequence of moves makes sense to you. And you're going to look at it and you're going to analyze it and say, well, gee, this was dumb. I don't know why I did this. And you're going to maybe find your reason there. But a lot of times it's not going to be so crystal clear. You're going to find games where you go back and you investigate and you're like, okay, I gave my opponent this entire corner, this giant corner here that I've been unable to match in terms of my own territory, and that's why he won the game. You're going to find that situation and you're going to be like, okay, why did I do that? Why did I give him that corner? And then you go back and you're going to look at a group that's weak and you're like, oh, I gave him that group, that corner because I had no choice. I was going to die if I didn't play here. And these moves were essential to this group living, and that's why my opponent got the corner. And you're going to be like, okay, well, if I had no choice, then was I predestined to lose? No, you need to now investigate why that group was so weak and go backwards from there. How did that weak group get created? And this may involve a couple of steps of peeling back. Basically, generational trauma passed on from your groups to your other groups. And so until you get to the point where you find a decision that you made where you feel your hand wasn't forced, it's not always going to be, like I said, crystal clear. A lot of these situations are going to be muddy. And going back, you're not always going to find a clear-cut reason for why that territory came to be. And in other situations, this is like kind of assuming a very simple flow of the game where you kind of just made a mistake and your opponent got a whole bunch of stuff. Like, that's not how Go games go. Sometimes your opponent makes a huge mistake, you fail to capitalize on it, then your opponent takes advantage, and it's like back and forth, back and forth. So you're really going to have to put your thinking cap on, and on top of your archaeologist hat, of course, and try to think critically about what happened during the game. And once you've done that, and although you may not find the best answer, at least you've looked into it and you have something to ask somebody else, or perhaps the AI, which I'll get into next. AI. So once you've looked into it and you kind of have an idea, before you go to the AI, sit with the moves that you feel are suspect. Find other ways and try to find ways to solve the problems that you faced. Let's say you actually, going back to the previous example, let's say that you find that weak group and you're like, oh, okay, I was forced to give my opponent this territory because I had this weak group I had to protect. Think critically about that before just saying like, okay, I'm going to go back and see why this group was created. Before you do that, look at the weak group and you're like, okay, was there a more aggressive way to protect this weak group? Were there any other ways for this group to live? Was this actually a weak group that was in danger? Question yourself, right? Find all of the ways that you could maybe wiggle out of this situation, this sticky situation that you find yourself in. And really put your brain power into it, because I think, I don't know, it's natural to just kind of assume things just on first glance. But this is your chance to redeem yourself. In the game, you're going to have a limited amount of time and you're not going to be able to figure out all these questions. But after the game, now the pressure is off. You're probably not as motivated, but you have so much more time to just figure it out. And figuring it out will help you next time and really re-ingrain that stuff into your brain, and so that you know maybe how to think about the situation next time. Okay, so once you've done all that work, you've done the autopsy, now it's time to plug into the AI. Now, some people may say, oh, don't use AI and whatever, but like I personally think it's good as long as you know the limitations and know your own limitations on how to interpret AI. You can get really lost in it, and so it is kind of difficult to say, but and of course, like having a stronger player with you is probably always going to be better because they are able to explain. But if you want to use AI as a tool, here are some tips. I've come up with some symptoms maybe that AI can tell you about your game and how to interpret those symptoms. So immediately, I think what most people do on an AI evaluation is they just go to the sharp increases and decreases in the game and take a look at what the situation is. I'm calling these cliffs. So if you look at the AI graph, so you have the typical one. I don't think I've seen any other format for this, but it's basically just an x-axis graph with the line on the y-axis showing white or black win rate, with the 0 x-axis line being the 50-50%, like, oh, it's an even game, and then one side being white and one side being black. If you've plugged your game into AI, you are familiar with this. But there are two versions, and I've said this before. One is a win percentage version, and the other is a points-based version. I highly recommend using the points-based version. I honestly still don't fully understand what the win rate means, because I think what I've heard is that the AI believes this many outcomes based on this position will go to white versus black, and that's the win rate. But that, I feel like the win rate, it just, in human terms, it doesn't really mean anything to me. So I really think that points are the way to go. That's the way we think about the game, honestly. And we think about like, oh, who has more points? They're winning, right? And the AI will evaluate, obviously, influence as a certain amount of points as well, right? It's not just counting. It's not just a score estimator running, right? So I think it's a good way to look at your game through the lens of AI. So once you've set it at the points setting, you'll see the line go up and down throughout the game. And there are many different, I'm going to call this the game DNA. And one of the things that you will find as a pattern is the cliff. And that's the thing that everybody gravitates towards. If you see a sharp increase or decrease, you're going to zoom into that move and you're going to find out what went wrong or what went right. And if you're not as familiar with using AI, know that AI will never reward you for a good move. It will just say you did not lose anything. It will really, everything that changes from a win rate perspective will because somebody screwed up. Because AI expects perfect play, and so when you make an imperfect move and you make a very imperfect move, it will swing one way or the other. If you make a perfect move, you'll just kind of keep the status quo. So just a note about that. So once you've identified the cliffs of your game, you look at them, and I think OGS for free will show you the biggest swings. And by that, you can look at what the sequence is at that point. And it's not always going to be apparent why. It's going to actually be really challenging a lot of the times. But when I look at it, or when you look at it, you should really sit with it, right? And try to understand what the cliff reason is, like why the game shifted so much at that point. And without looking too deep into the AI, try to read out what is going on, whether it's like, oh, this group was alive, but now it's dead. Or it's like, this was a very proper move that you missed. You needed to push here because you lost too many liberties and you gave your opponent too many Sente forcing moves. It's going to be hard, right? So the cliffs, you can kind of look at it. Some of them will be kind of easy to understand. Some of them will be very difficult to understand. I would say don't spend too much time on it, but spend some time on it, right? So don't just blow through it and just kind of look at it and then glance at it and move on. Spend like a small amount of time, like more than the thinking time, but less than like, I don't know. Don't go crazy is all I'm saying. Okay, cliffs are pretty self-explanatory. That's the thing that everybody looks at. But the next thing I think is, very worth talking about, zigzags. You'll notice on an AI evaluation, zigzags, little zigzags, just up and down, up and down, up and down. And these patterns, and you can have them as small zigzags. Sometimes the zigzag is just an up and a down. But these are really, really good hotspots to hone in on, because even if they're small zigzags with a small amplitude, it's like a 5-point zigzag, versus like some of them are going to be like really big ones, like 20-point zigzags. As you get stronger, those giant zigzags will not really exist. I don't think pros will generally have zigzags in their game. But what do zigzags mean? Zigzags mean that both players are missing something vital. That no matter what moves the other players are playing, it's not making that one AI move value decrease, which is strange, right? Because like, imagine I have a move that is a very important move, but I miss it and I play something else. That something else that I play, I personally may believe that it's an urgent thing that my opponent needs to respond to. And that usually is the case. Like if I go and attach something, then it's like, okay, even though that move over there was the important move, this is a new situation now. When I put this move down, this is the new important move. But in the zigzag situation, AI is like, I don't care what you did over there. I don't care what you did in that corner. This is still more important. And so the zigzag is just really the AI going like, yo, check this out. You shouldn't be like sleeping on this. So even if they're small zigzags, they're like maybe not the most game-changing zigzags. And keep in mind, zigzags are not always going to be zigging and zagging around the 0 line. Sometimes the zigzags will be above or below the line. But nevertheless, they're important moves that the AI is pointing at, whether you play there or not. So it's a really good situation, and I find that these zigzag situations are the easiest to figure out in terms of what the AI wants you to do. The cliffs can be hit or miss. A lot of them will just be like, I have no idea why the AI wants me to play Tengen right now, and I can't figure it out. And it just may elude you. But with the zigzags, I find that this is a very easy way to look at it and just focus on what the AI wants and look at the two suggested. Sometimes it's a black move. AI wants black to play in this location, but then when it zigs, AI wants white to play in a different location, and then it zags, and then it suggests that black plays in that first location that it suggested. Sometimes it even changes throughout the zigs and the zags, but it's like kind of in the same area. So you're going to have to look at the area and just kind of evaluate, what does AI want me to do? What is it trying to do? And really sit with it and think about it and read what the situation is. Reviewing isn't easy. It's going to require some critical thinking from the reviewer's part, and that's why it makes you stronger, because you're exercising your brain. So once you've identified kind of like a hypothesis of why it's suggesting it, and you really have tried to figure it out, you can ask the AI some questions. Like, okay, you're saying that I got to play here because if I don't play here, my opponent can kill my group. Then you can, I don't know, try playing there, but maybe another type of move that also allows you to live, and see if the AI still wants you to do that. So there are ways to kind of test your hypotheses and test the AI and see like, oh, what move do you suggest in this situation? It's like, okay, if I play here where the group would still be alive, would you still recommend that blue move? And if it does, then it's like, okay, maybe that's not the reason why you're recommending that move. So try to come up with some theories and try to figure it out. But generally, the zigzags are, I think, the easiest things to figure out when you look at the AI graph pattern. And then finally, I'm going to talk about something I'm calling slopes. So slopes are like cliffs, but not so sudden. It's just like you just see the graph go up and up and up and up and up over a period of several moves. And these are going to be a little bit tricky to identify because sometimes your opponent's just better than you and they just play more efficiently, and it's just point after point after point, and your opponent's just gaining an advantage on you like that. But sometimes these slopes, they mean that you made a sequence with the wrong mentality and you're playing maybe in the wrong direction. And so these things kind of are harder to identify. They're usually not going to be these crazy life and death misses or blunders or things like that. These are going to be more like, oh, what is your overall strategy? And how did you implement that strategy? And why is that strategy not working for you? And that's usually what the slope, the gradual slope, will indicate. But try to localize the slopes and think about what you are trying to do during the duration of that slope and what the AI is suggesting. Compare the two, and then just try to reach your conclusions from there. But the slopes, I find, are, for me, the hardest to tell what the AI is trying to say. But if you just kind of look at this DNA of the AI graph patterns and identify these areas and patterns, it's a good way to kind of zoom in to the most important parts of the AI evaluation. Okay, so I've talked about doing the autopsy and then examining the AI DNA. And now, and I've talked about these in this order because I think this is the order of importance. And I'm going to continue that by saying the next thing you should look at is the end game. And this is not going to affect all of the games. Some games, just end game is absolutely not important. It's just too one-sided one way or another. But I mean, I guess you can still kind of learn from it. But end game, it's probably gonna be a couple point swings here and there. And especially if this game was lost or won at the very end, and you see this like tiny switch from black to white or white to black at the very end of the game, that's only a few points, then you know it's an end game loss or an end game victory. And it's definitely worth checking out at that point. But essentially, you just want to look for tiny increments. So at this point of the game, you're looking for sub 5 point swings here. And it's always good to just kind of evaluate an endgame. The thing about endgame is that it's so objective. It's just like who has more points. And I've been thinking about explaining the best way to go about endgame, like a simple mentality for endgame. And I may do that in a future episode. But it should be fairly self-explanatory. You may find some sequences in the endgame that are very complicated. If it starts to overwhelm you, just skip over it. I would say it's not super important. And then finally, you should move on to Joseki. I opened this episode saying how my reviews usually go and how I analyze Joseki right away and I just get lost in it. I don't think I should be doing that. I think that Joseki is maybe the least important part of the review for me. And the way I should analyze Joseki, I think, is just looking at anything unfamiliar, looking at the Joseki, and finding out like and just kind of feeling a sense of balance of what should be played in this situation. I think a lot of Joseki is just feel, not necessarily memorization. Sometimes one of the things I did actually recently in the game that I won is I played off of my known Joseki. I played a fighting move, and I knew this was like a fighting move, and I didn't know anything else about it. And I went through it and I tried to play the best moves in that situation that I could. And then afterwards, when I looked at the Joseki, I actually played pretty decently. And I looked at what the Joseki was. I played pretty closely to it and I obtained similarly the objective of the Joseki. And I thought, you know what, I did pretty well. And so that kind of training could be good. Sometimes you want to play off Joseki just to see if you know how to handle that corner. Corners are weird, man. Like corners just, they're different. And it's like, on the one hand, like middle game and end game is like, oh, you really got to like figure it out. There's an answer. Joseki is like, it's like this weird, spacey, nebulous world where anything can happen. And sometimes it's good to come out of your comfort zone. But anyway, Joseki, you shouldn't study too much, I would say. It's always good to familiarize with yourself with a few sequences. But in terms of a review, I think it's just like if you've seen yourself fail a certain Joseki a couple times, or if you've seen a couple of Joseki multiple times recently and you're like, oh, it would be good to know how to handle that. By that point, you're going to have been exposed to that enough to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and actually learn this Joseki. And that's the way I think you should study Joseki, not in like a game-by-game basis and like, oh, I didn't know this Joseki this game. I'm going to memorize the whole variation branch and everything. So starting with the Autopsy, going into AI DNA analysis, into the end game, then Joseki. And that sounds like a lot, and it sounds like that would take a long time. But if you just do the Autopsy, I think that's really the key. And then the AI graph, like, I don't know, you could do like a quick abbreviated version of the analysis. It's probably gonna be the most beneficial way to go about reviewing your games, to just go through these things real quick. And although I say real quick, I want to caution you and say that although I'm saying real quick, you should think and sit with certain positions and really digest them before moving on. Let's learn to watch Bajuk TV. Today's word is a very simple word, but a very essential word, 수. And that small, short word, 수, just means move. And you'll hear the commentators saying things like 좋은 수, which means a good move, or they'll say 떡수, which means a terrible move. It means like a rice cake move. I think it has to do with like the dumpling. I don't really know, but 수, right? If you hear the commentator saying 이수는 인공지능이 blah 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 blah, you're saying, you know, that the AI, they're saying, oh, this move the AI says blah 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 blah. And so hopefully by learning this word 수, you can kind of put a little more context into what the commentators are saying on Bajuk TV. Hope that helps. Lately, I've been really buying into the whole volume mentality again because of the whole pot thing, where the thing I talked about last week about the people who made more pots making better pots than the people who were told to make the best pot. And also David Beckham just doing keep-ups again and again and again without thinking and without really pausing to question the training that he was doing. Those things are really pushing me to try to just get in there and play more games and play as much Go and study as much as I can and do things, and rather than just kind of sitting here thinking about what I should do. So I've really tried to lean. I've really tried to lean on that kind of mentality lately. But now it's time for the DDK Advice Corner, and the tip of the day is don't wedge without a purpose. So wedging is something you'll see kind of commonly in play because wedging is a legitimate move. Wedging, by the way, means your stone is put right in between two stones, like a once-placed jump of your opponent's stones, and you're shoving your stone in the middle of those two. You'll see this move, and it's actually part of some Joseki, and it's a normal sequence in certain situations. But don't just wedge randomly without a purpose, because in and of itself, like inherently, the wedge is really a bad move in terms of liberty count. It's like you're playing a stone on the board, which normally has 4 liberties if you just play it in the middle of nowhere, and it's lost 2 of its liberties already. And it's like playing this crazy weak stone in your opponent's position. And if you haven't really read out the sequence of moves that comes after it, or you don't know why you're doing it, I would say don't play it, because a wedge is usually not going to be the right answer if you play it randomly. Know that there are certain situations where you are gaining influence and you're anticipating the Atari coming after, right? I think if you're going to play the wedge, at least read out the Atari that your opponent can make and what will happen after. But unless you know the Tsuji that you're playing, unless you've read out the sequence, don't just play a wedge without a purpose. And now it's time for listener mail. Merrick says, "Hi Justin, thank you for answering my previous emails in your podcast. I appreciate it." Well, of course, Merrick, I'm happy to. Regarding your question of the week in episode 84, yes, I once was at a point where I gave up Go. As a teenager, my brother and me discovered Hikaru no Go. Our dad bought us Go equipment and we started playing every day. That sounds awesome. Even though we had much fun playing each other, at one point we wanted to also play against different people. So we tried playing games on an online Go server. Don't remember which one. We lost every game, got frequently insulted during the games, and stopped playing Go. I'm so sorry that you went through that. Besides the rude online environment, it was also due to the fact that we didn't understand why we lost. I think we were about 25Q at that point. Okay. I actually played a couple of brothers. They were twins. I don't know if you got your twins with your brother, but that was an interesting experience because you could see like how they are on different tracks of improvement. One of them was better than the other. 15 years passed. My brother kept playing Go without me knowing, and I got to 5Q. 1 year ago, I started to get interested in manga again and started to reread Death Note, which is illustrated by Takeshi Obata. And then I remembered that he also drew Hikaru no Go and reread that manga too. Oh, I didn't realize he illustrated Death Note. That's awesome. I invited my brother to a game of Go and was pretty surprised to find out how good he was. Brother rivalry is one of the best sources of motivation. Happy face. That's funny how you mentioned this right after I talked about the twins, like, and they're on different tracks. Although I don't think their difference in skill was as drastic as yours. Continuing, I was furious. As the older brother, I had to be better. How childish. So I started watching one Nick Sabicki video each day starting from the very first. I also started with the video series Becoming 9Q by Paduk World on YouTube. I highly recommend it to everyone between 20 and 10Q. 1 year passed and now I am a 15Q on OGS. Well, congratulations, that is not a small feat. Nowadays, my study habits are much more diverse. I mostly enjoy learning Joseki and reading books, and I play with my brother regularly. Even though he wins every game, we still have a lot of fun. So that's my Go origin story. Sorry for the long email, happy face. Keep up the good work. Best regards, Merrick. Thank you so much for sharing, Merrick. I have to say, I mean, that's awesome that you get to play Go with your brother regularly. And the thing is, I wonder, do you ask your brother for help? Do you ask him to teach you, or do you go off on your own and sneak away and try to like train on your own and impress your brother in secret? Because I think that it's tough, because when you have like a rivalry like that, you may not want to ask for help. But then again, he's like probably going to be the best teacher for you. I'm curious to see when you overtake your brother, because I have confidence in you. But that's crazy. 15 years of like you didn't know that your brother was into Go that much, and was like shocked at the amount of skill he had. That must have probably been a pretty good moment for your brother to be like, oh yeah, okay, all right, time to shine, time to put this work to use and show where I've been through all these years. But that's an awesome story. I hope you improve more and more until you finally defeat your brother. It's always great to have somebody to target as a person to defeat in Go. It's like a real rank. Like ranks can kind of inflate and deflate. I guess personal skill can also do that too. But it's a lot more emotional to try to beat somebody that you can't beat. Anyway, thanks for sharing so much, Merrick. Heath writes, as a Go teacher, I loved your most recent episode on beginners getting frustrated. One thing I wanted to add to this conversation, people might get frustrated by the fact Go is a game. They might be good at all sorts of games, but Go is not those other games. Go is closer to an art form, even drawing comparison to martial arts. Martial arts actually adopted Go's ranking system. So the sooner someone is able to adjust their mindset away from winning to enjoying the experience and just seeing what they can learn from it, the better they'll be for it. Yes, because that's the thing. Go is like a spiritual test of your character, and you really have to adopt the right mindset to really stick with it and improve at it. One of the benefits of in-person meetups is that you can hopefully find stronger opponents that will help review your game afterwards. Using AI for beginners is not very helpful, as it will only tell you what to play, not why, not what it is taking into consideration. Just a side note here about that. Not only that, but it will also just suggest things for really, really, really complicated reasons, and it's just something that you would not be able to wrap your head around, as a lot of the moves you just can't fathom as an amateur. I'm still working on my skills for teaching beyond absolute beginners, but what some find useful is giving no Komi handicap or less handicap, and I will play thinking out loud. Also encouraging the student to ask questions or just share their thoughts as well. It's a bit like playing against yourself, but it helps the students start to see beyond their own level, and what we're doing is relevant to the game they are playing, so it might stick with them more than reading a book or watching a lecture. Thanks for the podcast, Heath. You know what? I've actually played with a similar idea. I thought maybe like to teach somebody what you can do is actually just suggest, hey, so we're starting this game, and I want you to play in the corner. Anywhere in the corner is fine. And then they play in the corner, and then you approach them. And it's like, okay, so now I'm playing here, so I want you to kind of back off of this group and make a little, like, you just tell them where to go. Just tell them what to do, and just play a game like that and just guide them through it. I wonder if that is a beneficial way to learn. So I think you have a similar idea here. Anyway, thanks so much for writing in, Heath. Michael, and also I'm going to mention Wampy has pinged me telling me about the match being on Netflix. Yes, I know, and I still haven't watched it. I'm looking for a good space in my life that is quiet and focused, where I can just put my attention into the movie. Thanks for thinking of me when you saw that news, guys. Carby writes, hey, I'll send it here since YouTube deletes my comment for some reason, probably too long. When I started playing, I reached 14Q pretty fast just by playing and reviewing with AI and sometimes stronger players. But after that, I've been stuck at 11 to 12Q in OGS for quite some time. That definitely cooled down my enthusiasm. Plus, some posts on Reddit that were telling how they reached SDK rank in the same time or faster that took me to reach 12Q didn't help at all. I've decided to take a break from the game for a couple of months and focused on Mahjong since losses and plateaus in Go was getting more and more frustrating. Hey, I feel you. I mean, I got a couple friends who made Dan in a year, and it's like, bro, I've been working at this for years and years, and so it can definitely be a little discouraging to hear about stuff like that. Pay it no mind, right? Pay it no mind. It's your journey, and I've come to realize that the growth is really what's important in Go. It doesn't matter where you are, the enjoyment comes just simply from growth. Whether you're going from 11 to 8Q or from 1 Dan to 2 Dan, those things are what's so meaningful and enjoyable. It's your growth that's what's important. After 3 months, I'm back at it with my old enthusiasm for the game, and I decided that I'm gonna approach it a bit more seriously if I want to get to SDK. I've read Toshiro Kageyama Lessons in the Fundamentals of Go, speak of the devil, already, and I'm going through James Davis' Life and Death book right now. That one I haven't read. I don't have that one. Plus, I solve at least 40 Sumego problems daily. I still don't see that much progress yet, but on good days I win against 10Q, so I'm gonna keep at it. Wow, 40 daily. That's a lot. Huh. What I recommend to you, I mean, that's a lot of dedication. 40 to sink in 40 a day. If you have a stronger friend, just pitch them the idea and be like, hey, these are the problems that I'm working on. And maybe like ask them like, is this an appropriate set for my level? Do you fully do them? And like, I would really pay attention to your process, because 40 a day would take quite a bit of time if they were at all challenging in the slightest. And maybe listen to my Sumego episode. If you're gonna do 40 problems a day, that's a lot, man. That's impressive. And if you're not seeing results from doing that, then definitely look and review at what you're doing, because that will definitely get you results, in my view. I think it's pretty hard to keep your passion for the game when progress slows down, but I never consider to abandon the game completely, even if I get really frustrated when I lose. Go is still fun. Besides all that, I don't know any board game that would come close to it in that regard. Touché. But I know some people who reached 1 Don Fox and then gave up on Go completely because they stopped progressing and were not ready to spend more time studying it, but they still watch content about it. So, oh my goodness, here we go with the stupid... I'm sorry. My listener mail music starts playing randomly while I'm... Oh, you guys hear the miss... Okay, so here's a fun fact. I don't listen to the listener mail music while I read listener mail. It's muted. So sometimes I forget to mute it and it just plays while I'm talking. And so I don't know if you heard it anyway. But anyway, sorry for that. Where was I? Okay, so let's just start from here. But I know some people who reached 1 Don Fox and then gave up on Go completely because they stopped progressing and were not ready to spend more time studying it, but they still watch content about it. So I think stagnation may be a huge factor. Not a lot of people are ready to play just for the sake of playing without improvement. I hope it wasn't too much text/bragging, and sorry if there's any typos, because since English isn't my native language, thank you for your podcast. It's really interesting to listen to. Well, thank you so much for writing in. I don't know what you mean by bragging. I didn't sense any bragging. And if I could speak Spanish in the way that you speak English, my life would be complete. So I think your English is fine. The stagnation thing, that's where I'm at. I reached 1 Don Fox, and I'm trying to work through breaking this barrier right here, but I'm not giving up. Like, I really want to get past where I'm at, and I do feel like I'm facing a bit of a wall right now. But for some reason, I don't know. I think at one point I resigned myself to, like, it's not that I'm giving up on improving. I very, very much want to improve. But what I enjoy is the process of trying to improve. So that's what really gives me enjoyment. The fact that I can put effort into something and try to just beat this. I'm a very, for certain things, not everything, but I can have a lot of perseverance in certain things and be very persistent. One of those things is riddles. If you give me a logic riddle, I will never ask you for the answer. I will think about it for days until I figure it out. And I'm not talking about like stupid riddles. It's something like, oh man, I got to share with you guys some riddles, but for example, look up the blue eye riddle. That riddle, I love that riddle. But I spent like a really long time thinking about it. I slept on it, I woke up, and I remember solving it in my head and just going like, that is insane. And like my brain just kind of clicking on that riddle. And those things, like, I feel like the thing is that since I like that kind of thing where I just think very long about something, is one reason why Go is a good fit for me, because that's kind of what you do at a Go board. You just sit down, you look at it, and you think for a while. And that's kind of how I approach life and death problems. And sometimes it's to my detriment because I spend too much time on something that I should probably move on from. I guess this is another thing that makes Go so challenging, is that you do run into these walls and you do have to figure out how much you want this and how much you want to keep going at it, even if you don't see results. It's a big struggle. Thanks so much for writing in with your thoughtful email, Carby. Sadaharu writes, I saw those posts too. Oh yeah, so you're talking about the Reddit post I talked about during that episode. I saw those posts too, and I think there are a few types of people who want to give up. 1, they didn't expect the learning curve to be so high. 2, they thought they can do well because of their experience, chess, etc., so they are frustrated that they can't understand the game. 3, the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people think they know the limits of the game already and thinks there's nothing more to it. Oh, that's the worst one, when someone's like, it's not much to it, and then they just kind of like think it's not interesting. 1 and 2 are similar, and like you said, they need to adjust their expectations. Go is not an easy game to learn, which is why we have the saying, lose your first 100 games quickly. There's also a limit to how much you can learn by yourself, so if they're serious about it, I suggest getting a teacher to help. If they really feel like giving up, they can also always take a break and then come back and try again later. For the third type, I don't think there's anything that can be done. Maybe you can make an episode on it, lol. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is like the third one is just like, it's just like people choosing to be ignorant about certain things, right? And you can't really do anything about it. Just not meant to play Go, maybe. But yeah, that's like, you're kind of like touching on something that Carby also said. It's not only the game that's hard, but the experience of trying to get better that is hard. And I think it's like, I don't know, I just like the challenge. And that's what's like such a amazing thing for me, is like, I know certain things about this game that weaker players don't, and it's a mystery why that gap is there. And then at the same time, there are people better than me, and there is that same gap above me, and I don't know what they're understanding. And it's like such a cool thing, I think, for me. Thanks for writing in, as always, Sadaharu. Crispy Toast writes, I think AI has had an adverse effect on newer players. I hit it a bit when I first started playing, but if you make a mistake that is not glaringly obvious and review it with AI, you will see the blue move, but never have the why. So many of the newer players are hesitant to get their games reviewed, and there are some that don't listen to those reviews. That said, taking a break is good for some people, whether it is by choice or life happening. When I first tried to start, it was after I watched Hikaru no Go the first time. I watched some YouTube videos and that was it. Then like 2 years later, I watched it again and found OBS. I played for 6 months and took a 6-month break due to life. Then I came back and have not put it down since. Also, the match is coming to Netflix tomorrow, 5/7. Thank you so much for writing in, Crispy Toast, and also thanks for letting me know about the match. I'm glad you guys all know how excited I am, and yet, ironically, I haven't watched it yet, but I think it'll give people a chance to actually watch it before I talk about it, so I am very, very much looking forward to it. But on your comments about sometimes a break being good for some people, I very much agree. I think that my long hiatus afterwards, when I came back, I had a huge spike in improvement and broke through my plateau. And I don't know why, or like, I don't know if that's really a thing, but I did know a stronger player who recommended, if you're at a plateau, consider taking a break. And just take a little break from Go for a while and see if that does anything. Because I don't know, maybe it just helps us like wire up our Go knowledge a little bit, and then like when we come back, we see it with fresh eyes and we're able to implement it all again. I don't know if that's pseudoscience or whatever, but maybe it's a thing. If you guys have experienced something like that, let me know, and we'll feed into the confirmation bias. Anyway, thanks for writing in, Crispy Toast. My boy writes, and I'm going to give some context for this comment. This is in response to my episode called Should You Give Up on Go? And my boy simply wrote, no. Well said. Spiros writes, another amazing episode. Thank you, Spiros. Thank you for your another amazing comment. Now, the question of the week. what is your review process like? Or do you have like a bite-sized review process? What are your must-dos whenever you play a game? When you go through the game, what are your checklist of items that you look for? Let me know, and if you want to share your thoughts on that question, or if you have any kind of Go comment or story or question to share, leave a comment wherever you found this episode, or email me directly at starpointpaduk@gmail.com. That's starpoint, BADUK, @gmail.com. If you're a YouTube listener, I would greatly appreciate a like and a subscribe. And if you're a podcast listener, reviews and ratings also help. A very, very special thank you to James B. and Tristan for supporting Starpoint. If you want to support the show, you can go to Ko-fi.com. That's Ko-fi.com/starpointpaduk. That's KO-FI. Or check out the Starpoint store at store.starpointpaduk.com. You know, I know a guy, and he played Go so much. He was super addicted. He played Go so much that his skin started to turn a shade of bluish purple. He was really indigo. You get it? He was really indigo. Like, he's really into Go. And yet he was really indigo. I don't think I had to spell that out, but I did anyway. Thanks for listening. Keep playing Go.